Hello everybody and welcome back to the Dragon's Library. So today we are going to be talking about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. It's a game I finished streaming recently and I am excited to talk about it. So let's get into it. The Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania game which seems unrelated to the previous games in the series. It was made by Ubisoft, who took a break from making terrible games to make one that's just kind of okay. I know some people really like modern Assassin's Creed games, but as someone who saw those if Ubisoft made Elden Ring's UI images and instantly recoiled in disgust, I'm not really a fan of their more modern work, and even a lot of their older stuff has parts that annoy me. I do actually like a lot of older Ubisoft stuff prior to AC Origins. I didn't play a bunch of their things. I never played Far Cry 3, for example, but I did like Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. More when it was being Black Flag, the fun pirate game, and less Assassin's Creed 4, the stalk people while not getting too close game. So I do like their older stuff, and that makes it all the more strange that I had never played a Prince of Persia game before. I know the original games were from 1980s and probably from a different company, and I've heard really good things about Sands of Time, but I've just never had a chance to play that one, or the GameCube one on 3 where you got edgy. So when I saw this on the release schedule, I went, what the hell? And started streaming a playthrough. Honestly, it was pretty fun, all things considered. Now, before I go any further, let's make some things clear. Lost Crown seems to be very different from the Sands of Time and its sequels. The game is a full-on side-scrolling Metroidvania instead of a third-person action platformer, and the plot seems to be completely removed from the prior series, with the new story having a greater focus on Persian history and mythology. In fact, you're not even playing as the Prince of Persia. Instead, you play as Sargon, one of several elite warriors tasked with defending Persia and the royal family. The story starts with mid-invasion, with an invading army attacking Persia after 30 years of drought and famine following the mysterious death of King Darius and the fall of Mount Quaff to an unknown curse of time. The Immortals show up and defeat the invaders, with Sargon personally defeating their general. However, that night, during the celebration, Sargon's mentor Anahita kidnaps the prince and drags him to Mount Quaff. The Immortals are sent after them, but upon entering the former capital, they find that time no longer moves in a predictable manner. And as they are separated, Sargon journeys to rescue the prince, but along the way he begins to question Anahita's motives, and how this place of gods, men, and monsters fell to ruin. From there, your standard Metroidvania gameplay opens up. You got a basic attack, a parry, a special attack meter. You unlock new powers, which also operate as exploration abilities by defeating bosses or finding rare items. Like in Hollow Knight, you can equip various amulets in order to gain various effects, which can change how you fight. I would recommend swapping them around, and often to fit the area or boss. For example, there's this Void Blade. It added a ranged slash to my melee attacks, which recharges after a few seconds of going without attacking. Several of the boss fights have times where, in order to dodge them, you'll have to be as far away from them as possible, or you'll have to be, halfway across the arena. This amulet lets you chip away at their health with a single slash, even if there isn't an opening for you to run up and start comboing against them. This can be very useful in very specific fights or areas, particularly those where you're doing a lot of aerial or ranged combat, and you don't want to waste arrows, which are limited supply. I wouldn't say the amulets are super varied. For example, there aren't a lot of them that affect your Athra special attack meter. A few give you more Athra for dealing damage or parrying, but you can't make a full mage style build like you could in Hollow Knight, or like a Beastkeeper build or something. Honestly, the lack of variety is pretty much annoying. You're basically going to be comboing and slashing. Maybe you'll do it in the air, maybe you'll do it on the ground. There are a handful of odd amulets, but they don't feel like they encourage enough of a unique playstyle. One can technically make your chakram explode. 2 or 3 affect your arrows, maybe more damage, maybe they'll add fire. Unfortunately, most of the amulets are just the standard. You get less damage to certain attacks, or you get less damage to general, or you get resistance to environment. Hey, you can come back to life once after you die, but you have to go to a checkpoint to respawn it. Higher attack in the air, higher attack when you're at full health. Honestly, these just feel very uninspired. So the combat is unoriginal, but it's decent. How about the platforming? Now, I want to make clear the game does have some very well-designed platforming segments. Each area has multiple distinct types of platforms to make them stand out, and several frustrating but rewarding platforming segments. However, while I enjoyed the challenges presented, I have 2 main issues. First, the platforming challenges often have few to no checkpoints, and they can be pretty long, like a lot of things you have to dodge all in a row. That means if you spend like 5 minutes carefully hopping past dozens of whirling blades and you miss at the very end, you go all the way back to the beginning. It feels worse when you're standing on one of these wooden platforms. Midway through the platforms that you've landed, you're there, there's no enemies, there's no trap. This is a solid platform that the game has established in prior parts to be a place you respawn when you get hit by spikes. And the game will just sometimes decide, nope, sorry, you're going all the way up to the beginning of this challenge because we think that's better somehow. And it's like, then don't put a solid platform there. If your challenge is so long that it needs a break there, it needs to let the player go back there if they accidentally glance off a spike on the ground. I'm sorry, that's so stupid. Maybe that is just me. There's also the issue of the game not making it clear when the platforming segment is a side challenge or the path forward. There were 3 separate occasions where I spent over half an hour dying to this difficult platforming segment that I was sure was going to lead the way forward, only to find out it's one of those stupid Xerxes coin runs where you now have to do the entire segment in reverse without stopping to even get the prize. Now you might say this is normal Metroidvania design, but I actually disagree. In most Metroidvanias I play, even if you do have an optional path that by mistake you stumble into or try and go through thinking it's the main way forward, the benefit of the game design is that you get a reward out of it. But because in the Lost Crown, it will likely take you a few more attempts to do the segment in reverse because these segments can get very difficult, most players who want to progress the story instead or who don't have a lot of time won't leave the area with a coin that maybe can, buy them an upgrade or something like that to ease their annoyance. What's more likely to happen is that, like me, they will get the coin, sigh, and say, I guess I'll try, and then die while trying to bring it back to the start point so they can actually get a reward. Once they respawn, again, all the way at the start, they will leave the area cursing the designers for wasting their goddamn time with nothing to show for it. My god, seriously? No. I mean, I might as well attempt to get back at this point. No. Alright, I'm leaving. Bye. I will never re-enter that room ever again. I'm not 100% in this game, I don't care. It also doesn't help the coins aren't that valuable. They're used to buy a small selection of items that are very optional, and technically also to upgrade amulets. However, since the game has enough for all of the upgrades you need for all of the amulets, and you're only going to use a few of these, you'll get several Xerxes coins from just playing the main story with minor exploration at the beginning. And once you upgrade the handful of amulets you use, you don't really need more. You only need like 6 of these things to upgrade your amulets to level 3, and if you only use maybe like 6 or 7 amulets, you don't need the dozens upon dozens the game throws at you in these side contents. So once you upgrade the handful of amulets you want to use, and the handful of optional ones you'll swap out for certain areas, you just stop. So it's a really subpar reward that wastes the loads of the player's time and leaves them feeling like the side contents are basically just designed to screw with them instead of actually be challenges that reward them. In conclusion, fucks those damn Xerxes coins and the stupid platforming segments they're attached to. As for the bosses, it's kind of a mixed bag. The first few bosses are fine and fairly easy. Once you get for the Menelaus fight though, things kind of shift. I still think these fights are fun and enjoyable and mostly well designed. Each of them encourage a different style of combat, including several that focus on aerial combat so you can get the most use of those bonuses while doing stuff in air amulets. However, the last 4 bosses have what I like to call a bullshit attack. It is an attack that for one of 2 reasons is essentially either impossible or very, very hard to dodge to the point of being absurd. Either the attack uses RNG in a way that you'll sometimes get hit no matter what you do because you just can't either see the path to safety or you just can't get to the next safe path effectively. Or it's technically dodgeable, it requires absurd perfection not to get hit. The second one is easier to explain, so let's start with that. There's one boss that has this big sweeping attack, which he does twice in a row, which I only found out after I stayed in the air a long time, which is nearly impossible to dodge. It's the only attack I never managed to evade, instead just eating the hidden healing and eventually killing the boss. I tried a lot to evade it. I tried using every power I had. I tried interrupting with a special attack. I tried attacking the boss in between the attacks. I just did everything. I tried to stay everything there for as long as possible using my powers. And after beating the boss, I learned that last thing is technically how you do it. You can dodge him by stringing powers together, but the timing of both the initial chakram throw, which you have to teleport to at exactly at its apex, timing a secondary shadow teleport right there, dashing and doing some other jumps while also attacking in the air to keep yourself in the air, have to be done very precisely, and if you throw the chakram too early, you're gonna get hit. The other attacks fall into the RNG problem. The best example is probably the archer that causes the rain of arrows. I technically dodged the attack at least once during an attempt, but it felt like I got lucky instead of was actually good and dodged it. The arrows had enough clear openings for me to stand in that particular instance, but other times you just don't have a safe space to go to. And screw you. It didn't feel like it was RNG that was designed so that there's always a way for the player to get to the next safe zone, so to speak. It felt like sometimes you go to the right instead of the left, and the game is like, oh, you chose to go to this safe zone initially instead of this one? Well, there was literally no way for you to tell it at the time, but the next set of arrows that are coming down after that are now going to make it impossible for you to get over to the left, which is where the only safe zone suddenly is. And it's little things like that, where the RNG is designed in such a way that I don't feel like they made sure it is always possible to effectively dodge. And this might just be me whining. I personally found this very, very annoying. I don't like attacks that use a lot of RNG, and I feel like these are literally just rolling dice over whether you dodge. It's only that large sweeping attack from that one boss I was never able to dodge, and the arrow rain that I feel like are really the only ones that are officially undodgeable. There are probably some really, really good movement combinations you can do, like jumping in just the right areas or doing this each time. That would probably make some of these attacks easier to dodge, and somebody who plays this game like 4 times in a row will probably just think I'm bitching. So I do want to make that very clear. It was a problem for me, but it might not be a problem for you. Now, after all of that, I need to take a break from the gameplay, so let's start talking about the story. Spoilers ahead. I should have a timestamp on the screen. Skip ahead if you do not want to see this. So Varum discovers Anahita was ordered to bring the prince here by the queen. Then Varum shows up and murders the prince, claiming he will seize the throne and claim the power of the Smirk for himself. He beats Sargon off, throws him off a bridge, tells the other immortals Sargon killed the prince. 2 of Sargon's allies confront him, but listen to him. The others side with Varum. Sargon learned the way of using the time curse to change the past and save the prince, so he sets out along the way to do so. He has to fight several creatures loosely based on Persian mythology and a few of his fellow immortal warriors. After heading back in time, he saves the prince, but learns Varum is actually the son of King Darius and the rightful heir. The queen apparently killed the king, which was the spoiler from her history fact. If you look up the queen by the same name involved in Persia, she was not a Persian queen, she was an enemy queen who killed one of their kings. Caused the curse, and the prince was sent here to unknowingly retrieve the Simurgh for her so she could legitimize her rule and wipe the slate clean. Once he realizes this, Varum goes crazy and tries to remake the universe from an alternate timeline. However, with the curse finally broken at the very end, because Sargon defeats him, the surviving immortals and the prince reveal the queen's treachery. Sargon decides to depart, leaving a younger version of Varum from an alternate timeline that he found in the hands of his 2 surviving comrades. Now, while this story is fine on principle, the writing gets really lazy. At first, I thought some of this was just them trying to write characters who are moving at different paces, and days are passing for you and hours pass for me, and Varum's having his weird flashback stuff going on. However, they never explained how Varum got out of the time curse originally. And initial interactions with the immortals, yeah, they have them confused and lost, and I think it still works for the most part. I think like the initial versions of this still work. But after the twist with Varum, the writing gets really sloppy. The plot pulls out new excuses for stuff out of its own ass whenever it needs something. Take the fight with your comrades. First, they start by accusing you of murder, and then they're always like, it doesn't matter. Varum will be a better king. Prepare to die, traitor. I don't care if he killed the king. Who cares? Varum will do better. Then you fight him, and there's a cutscene, and they're all like, yeah, you've gotten good, kid. Wish we hadn't fought, but hey, we're friends, right? And then they Thanos snap away. The whiplash is just so off-putting. I get what they're trying to do, but there isn't any hesitation in them before the cutscenes. There's not really a lot of good dialogue for them during the fight, aside from, oh, you pushed me to my limit, Dragon Ball fight. It just comes out of nowhere. Also, the writers just straight up forgot one character existed. I'm not joking, I've never seen anything like this. So at the start of the game, there's this blue-skinned assassin lady, which is already really out of place. There's no explanation for why she's blue, what her deal is. She's one of the 7 immortals. She seems to be super loyal to Varum. She shows up a few times at the beginning, I think, when the immortals are just arriving at the cursed area. Then she just stops showing up, and no one mentions her again. Just, what? I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. I mean, side content getting left on the cutting room floor is nothing new, but every other immortal is a major character and or boss fight. And she just quietly vanishes from the plot with no explanation? I checked it online too. It doesn't seem like she's some side quest or hinted at DLC thing. She just doesn't get mentioned or show up again after a certain point. It is bizarre, and I have like so many questions. Seriously, they couldn't just like put her body in some room and say she died to the curse or something. I don't get it. Moving on from the plot before I give myself an aneurysm over that last fact, let's talk about the mythology and the history the writers took inspiration from. Now, if you want a longer dive into this, I have a stream in the iCard where I discuss Persian myth in the game for like over an hour with a friend. I'll try and focus on stuff I didn't discuss in that stream, but time is limited, so let's get moving. So after having gone over it, I feel like the use of Persian mythology is a bit poor. The writers include stuff like Mount Goth and the Simurgh and the Manticore. They do so very little with these things though. For example, despite meeting a goddess in the game, Kaheva, who upgrades your weapons and is this blacksmith of the god, she doesn't exist in Persian mythology. Best case scenario, she's a loose adaptation of a blacksmith who led a rebellion as king as a kind of folk hero. Worst case, she's just entirely made up. That would be like a game inspired by Greek mythology having some OC character, forge god, instead of Hephaestus. It's really weird. They didn't seem to have any major gods or divine figures, despite you functionally being the home of the gods in their little world. They did seem to have better historical references, however. While writing the script, I learned that history buffs would have suspected the queen's motivation based on her name, like I said. Without spoiling, let's just say the historical queen wasn't Persian and had a similar opinion of Persian kings. Also, there was a Persian force called the Immortals, who were the elite infantry of the Achaemenid Empire, so making them some kind of, super soldier Avenger team is interesting adaptation. It seems like they did at least look up that a bit. Despite this, however, the games are set in a setting that draws from multiple different points in Persian history rather than a particular point in the past. That's not really a downside. You can choose to do this kind of conglomerate thing where you just take bits and pieces and shove them into a fictional world, but it's definitely not like an alternate history thing. It does, however, feel like they didn't do enough research to make me hopeful for some interesting mythology, which is a shame because I actually didn't know much about Persian mythology going in. In conclusion, I do think that for all I bitched and moaned, this game is pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's also not terrible either. I actually think it's a pretty fun Metroidvania, especially if you like some insane platforming challenges. There are some fairly interesting things. There are these staircases that switch which end they're attached to, like they swap between an up and down platform depending on if you're facing left and right. They have platforms that'll vanish depending on which direction you're facing left or right entirely, which is really cool. You don't think about how much you try and like angle yourself when you're jumping until you have to jump to the left with a platform that'll disappear if you turn to the left. It's interesting and fun, and I think the designers, especially of the platform levels, were very good at their job. The boss fights are still fun. Yeah, the combat's pretty rote, but, I mean, honestly, it's good enough. As a mythology nerd, I'm a little disappointed, but not everybody's going to this for that. And yeah, there are those unblockable attacks, but I said I beat the bosses, even if I couldn't dodge the attacks or block the attacks or parry the attacks. The only other criticism I'd have is the final boss fight. It's really easy to parry him, and the parry fills up your 3 meters entirely. So you're just parry, super attack, parry, super attack, parry, super attack. But hey, at least it's fun. I'll give this game a 7 out of 10. It's alright. I'd play some more of this in my free time if I had any. So, yeah. Moving on from there, we have the announcements. Hello, everybody. Now, I'm actually adding some of this after the fact. This video will probably get delayed again. I was trying to get it on Wednesday, but I didn't have enough time, and I'm re-recording a lot of this. So, long story short, I forgot that I'm going to have Dune on Thursday. This is probably not going to be out till like Friday evening. And as a result, I'm not going to be streaming on the previous Thursday, the 29th, whenever this is going out. I'm going to be going to see Dune around 7, so I just can't stream. I will try and send something out, but I'm not sure. I've done some stuff to do. Long story short, that Dune review is coming up soon. Look forward to that. This review, got it. We also have Dragon's Dogma 2 that's coming out soon in a few more weeks, so look forward to that as well. I'm also going to be streaming some Pal World before Dragon's Dogma 2 comes out. So all of that, yeah, really exciting. In addition, I am also going to be working on an Avatar: The Last Airbender Netflix review. I have some things to talk about. I want to say something, but I'm going to save that for the review. I just have some thoughts. Anyhow, that's basically all that's coming up soon. Look forward to all of that. Finally, we have the out card. There's a video YouTube recommends and the subscribe orb. Click on it and go to my channel and subscribe. And thank you very much for watching. Seriously, it means a lot. And I will see you all next time. Bye!